An historic trip for the Pope. Francis begins his journey to Burma and Bangladesh. We will have a report from our correspondent. Sexual harassment scandal. A top Democrat gives up a leadership position after allegations of misconduct. Day of rest. Stores in one European country will soon close their doors on some Sundays. What the Catholic Church is saying. And oh, Christmas tree. The Vatican gets ready for the birth of Jesus. We'll have a report from Rome on the preparations. On EWTN News Nightly for Monday, November 27th, 2017. Pope Francis arrives in Burma, also known as Myanmar, and his historic visit comes at a time of violence and mass migration for a minority Muslim group in the predominantly Buddhist nation. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you to those of you joining us from around the world for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Lauren Ashburn. The Holy Father will also make a stop in Bangladesh later this week. Edward Penton of EWTN's National Catholic Register traveled with Pope Francis and has more from Yangon.
Yes, it's been a very calm first day for Pope Francis, the first by a pope to visit Burma. But it's unusual too for Pope Francis to take the day off. He basically took a rest day today before the big ceremonies begin tomorrow to meet the president and Aung San Suu Kyi. But it was also that he did bring forward a meeting which was due later in the week with the head of the armed forces, which is significant due to the military crackdown earlier this year on the Rohingya Muslim minority. Lauren, back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Edward Penton. Many human rights activists will be watching to see how the Holy Father addresses Burma's crackdown on the Rohingya. It has led to a major humanitarian crisis. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson is not holding back, slamming the country's military. He accuses them of carrying out ethnic cleansing of the Muslim minority population. Correspondent Wyatt Goolsbee reports from the State Department. Good evening, Wyatt.
Good evening, Lauren. Secretary Tillerson is vowing to hold Burma's military and local vigilantes responsible for what he calls horrendous atrocities against the Rohingya. Many in Burma hope the Holy Father's visit will lay the groundwork for peaceful dialogue and an end to the conflict. Catholics from across the country pour into the capital of Burma, also known as Myanmar, to cheer on the Holy Father's motorcade. They make up only 1% of the population in this overwhelmingly Buddhist land. This woman says, "I'm so happy. For us, it's like God has arrived. Our country, Myanmar, can now achieve peace." And peacemaker is exactly the role many hope Pope Francis will play. Since violence erupted in late August, more than 600,000 Rohingya men, women, and children have crossed over into neighboring Bangladesh, carrying with them tales of persecution, rape, and murder. This Rohingya woman is grateful for the Pope's visit. She says he might help restore peace in the country, and she believes the Pope will make their situation better.
The humanitarian scale of this crisis is staggering.
Just 2 weeks ago, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson met with the country's leader and military chief in Burma, pledging up to $87 million in aid to help those displaced. A week later, Tillerson called for an independent investigation into the crisis. The Burmese government denies any violence against the group. Meanwhile, the work is on to prepare for the Holy Father's Mass. Hundreds of thousands are expected to attend, and though many will be listening carefully to his homily, it's what the Pope says to Burma's leaders in private that may prove more important. Francis will be in Burma for 3 days before heading to Bangladesh. Catholics in neighboring India say they're disappointed Pope Francis will not be able to visit their country while he is in South Asia. The last papal visit to India was Pope John Paul II in 1999. Lauren.
Correspondent Wyatt Goolsbee reporting from the State Department. Thank you, Wyatt. President Donald Trump and Senate Republicans scramble to make changes to a Republican tax bill in an effort to win over holdout GOP senators and pass a tax package by the end of the year. White House correspondent Mark Irons reports. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Lauren. The president had lunch with a handful of Republican senators who are on board with the current tax bill, but the GOP can only lose 2 votes. And Wisconsin Republican Senator Ron Johnson is having doubts about the current plan. Fellow Republicans plan to pass tax reform with or without him.
We always have to deal with everybody, so it's not any one particular person. These are tough times, these are tough issues, they're hard to deal with.
Yes, sir. Republican Senator Orrin Hatch leads the Senate Finance Committee. He hopes Democrats will, quote, get off their duffs and start working with Republicans on tax reform. Late this afternoon, we also heard directly from President Trump.
I think the tax bill is going very well. We had a meeting on it today. It's going to be a tremendous tax cut, the biggest in the history of our country. You'll have to pay a lot less tax.
President Trump looking to the World War II veterans in the room with him, the famous Navajo code talkers. He honored them today and denied the tax bill focuses on helping the rich. Instead, he says it mostly benefits people looking for jobs. Lauren, President Trump says he thinks he may have some Democrats supporting the bill, but at the same time, he's not counting on that. He says he just wants to get this bill passed.
Mark, the House and Senate approach tax reform differently. How are supporters going to come together?
Senator Hatch says he's willing to work with House members to resolve any differences between their 2 bills. He says he hopes to get tax reform passed before Christmas, just like President Trump wanted. Lauren.
White House correspondent Mark Irons, thank you. President Trump's pick to temporarily run a top government watchdog group runs into a legal challenge on his first day. Budget Director Mick Mulvaney begins as interim director at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. But Leandra English, the agency's former chief of staff, is filing a lawsuit saying she should have the job. By rules of succession, the White House is defending the appointment, citing a different law. Al Franken, a Democrat from Minnesota, dismisses any talk of resigning from the Senate, while Representative John Conyers steps down from a leadership position. Can politicians learn from the Catholic Church's handling of its sex abuse crisis by clergy? Some Catholics say yes. Jason Calvi joins us from Capitol Hill. Good evening, Jason.
Good evening, Lauren. The growing sex scandals plague Washington, and Catholics are weighing in. Back at work, Senator Franken faces the cameras in a press conference for the first time since allegations against him came out just before Congress's Thanksgiving break.
I am embarrassed.
Senator Al Franken says he let a lot of people down. But despite 4 accusations of sexually inappropriate behavior, he's not stepping down.
I am sorry. I know there are no magic words that I can say to regain your trust, and I know that's going to take time.
Allegations of sexual harassment are rocking the U.S. Congress. Representative John Conyers of Michigan is giving up his spot as top Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee. He faces allegations of sexual misconduct. Alabama's Republican Senate candidate Roy Moore is also accused. Both men deny the allegations. The Catholic Church in America has dealt with its own clergy sex abuse crisis. It implemented sweeping changes in 2002, zero tolerance for abuse, background checks for volunteers, and training for children. Professor Eileen Dombo chairs the Archdiocese of Washington's Child Protection Board. She says the American public can take a cue from the church.
In the church, we have victim assistance coordinators, we have offices of child and youth protection. You know, where in Hollywood or in politics on Capitol Hill is there an ombudsman for this issue, or who's a safe person to turn to make this report?
And Catholic Speaker Damon Owen says it all boils down to a misunderstanding of human sexuality.
The root cause issue of these sexual sins that are now coming to light are the fundamental misunderstanding of the power of what it means to be a man or a woman. And we see things like contraception leading to no fault to divorce, leading to prolific abortion, leading to the redefinition of marriage.
The House Ethics Committee will review the allegations against Representative Conyers. The Senate Ethics Committee, the allegations against Senator Franken. The House will vote this week on whether to require all members and staff go through anti-harassment training. The Senate recently approved a similar measure. Lauren?
Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi, thank you. Joining us now is Chris Plante, host of The Chris Plante Show and former CNN Pentagon correspondent. Welcome back to the program, Chris.
Hey, thanks for having me.
What do you think about the anti-harassment bill? Do you think they should go through this training?
Well, I mean, you know, come on. They don't know what they're supposed to do and what they're not. I mean, this is another classic Washington fig leaf. It's a do something. Everybody run in a circle around in the middle of the room and pretend like you're making something happen. It's more Washington hooey. I'll say hooey.
Hooey. Okay, I'm not going to change your language. Hooey. Democratic Senator Al Franken of Minnesota, as we just heard, told reporters that he let down people. He let them down, and he hopes to regain trust. Is this moral leadership?
No, this is a classic demonstration of the sort of the flexibility of liberal morality and Democrat Party morality. As I'm fond of saying, were it not for double standards, liberals would have no standards at all. And this is another prime example of that. If you look at their reaction to Judge Roy Moore, it is absolute, it is final, it is unambiguous.
A Republican.
Well, that's right. There is no due process for him. He is guilty. The women must be believed. Then Democrats start falling through the ceiling tiles, and of course they've got a completely different standard that they apply. Now everybody's entitled to due process, and we're not sure if the women are telling the truth. They're kind of tearing a half a page out of the old Clinton playbook where they're going after the women. The suggestion, what Nancy Pelosi and what also Congresswoman Jackie Speer yesterday of California were doing on the Sunday morning shows, was raising questions about the veracity of the claims made by the women, because they're circling the wagons once again, as they did with Bill Clinton. They're circling the wagons around Democrats because it's not a question of morality. To them, it's a question of politics.
But there have been Democrats, I believe, who have criticized this behavior.
Sure. Well, there are hundreds of them up there. I would hope that someone not cheating on their wife, not groping their interns or their staffers would have the moral standing to come forward and condemn this sort of thing. But when the leadership and when the Democrats send out Nancy Pelosi and Jackie Speer to effectively take shots at the women, to raise questions about the women, to circle the wagons around the men and talk about their right to due process, which is a great American tradition not afforded to Republicans, you see that what they're doing is protecting their own, and the women are no longer to be believed as they are with Judge Roy Moore.
What about Vice President Pence saying that he only dines with his wife and never dines alone with other women?
Right. Well, and he's been attacked for that and mocked for that and ridiculed for that because he's a straight and narrow guy, and he understands also that as a Republican, the standard that you're held to is the perception of impropriety, and the mere perception of impropriety for a Republican can be political death. For Democrats, it's, of course, bring me the DNA results from the blue dress. It's a different standard at all. Now,
for those of you who don't remember living through this Bill Clinton era, we are just going to have you Google that.
Very different legal standard.
That's right. All right.
Sure.
Chris Plant, host of The Chris Plant Show. Thank you very much. Survivors are giving harrowing accounts of a mosque attack in Egypt last week that killed more than 300 people. Witnesses at the massacre began at the start of the sermon when many had their heads down in prayer. Terrorists opened fire and threw grenades that shook the mosque's wall. 27 children died. An erupting volcano in Indonesia forces more than 100,000 people to evacuate. Explosions from Mount Agung can be heard 8 miles away. Ash has forced the airport in Bali to close, and the volcano's last eruption happened 50 years ago, killing more than 1,000 people. China's communist government is blocking groups seeking to travel from its country to the Vatican. According to reports, agencies that facilitate trips could be fined $40,000. The government says the ban is because it does not have official relations with the Holy See. Pope Francis offers hope to migrants and reminds the rest of the world of our responsibility toward them. We caught up with a Vatican official who explains the Holy Father's call to action.
The objective of the message is to say that we need to have a new style of relations among countries, based on dialogue and trust, and not on war and violence.
Archbishop Silvano Tomasi, who works with the Vatican, went on to say that the Pope strongly links migration with war. Coming up, the Centers for Disease Control says abortion in America hits an historic low. We'll have reaction.
Per I feriti e per tutta quella comunità.
Pope Francis says the main criteria on which we will be judged at the end of time is what we do for the least of our brothers and sisters. At his Angelus address on Sunday in Rome, the Holy Father adds Jesus will come to us at the end of time, but he also arrives every day and asks us to welcome him. A federal judge blocks a pro-life law in Texas set to take effect 2 months ago. The law bans using forceps and other instruments to remove the baby from the womb. Federal courts have previously blocked the method in Alabama, Kansas, Louisiana, and Oklahoma. According to recent data from the Centers for Disease Control, abortion rates in the U.S. have hit historic lows. The abortion rate dropped 2% between 2013 and 2014. But many pro-life Americans are asking, is it possible those numbers could go even lower now that we have a pro-life president and vice president? Reverend Dean Nelson is the National Outreach Director for Human Coalition. It's a tech-driven pro-life group helping save families from the tragedy of abortion. Welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Lauren. It's great to be here with you.
What do these numbers say about the pro-life movement in our country?
I think that they indicate that there is a strong pro-life presence within our country. At the state level, we've seen legislation that's been passed at the federal level, but abortion still is the leading cause of death in America, with over nearly 3,000 children that die needlessly every day, and that's more than 1 million a year. So while we can celebrate that this is a new historic low, the reality is that with a pro-life Congress and a pro-life president, what should we be doing more to actually advance the cause of life?
And what should we be doing?
Well, for one, I think that it's important for us to know that while we have HHS, which is the largest
Health
agency
Human Services
actually that oversees the CDC, we're actually encouraging them to look beyond just good policy, because they have initiated some good policy, to actual practice. Because as we state here today, there's not a particular initiative that HHS has that actually spends money to save preborn children.
Well, the president had promised to defund Planned Parenthood in his campaign, yet that hasn't happened. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, that would have been a great step. As we stated, we have a Congress that has decided that it does not want to defund Planned Parenthood. And so with all of those dollars that are still being spent towards the pro-abortion organization, what we're asking for is, what about supporting pro-life organizations that are doing good? HHS, I think, estimated has about $1 trillion budget. What resources could actually be used to push the growth of pro-life initiatives throughout our country to save innocent children?
Critics, though, would say that it is birth control that is keeping the abortion rate down. What do you say to that?
Well, in reality, abortion, if you look at it in these states, has gone down because there have been more restrictive laws that have been placed, and you have the rise of pregnancy centers and other organizations like Human Coalition that are rescuing children at rates that we've never seen before in key states. And so, but for us to really make the impact that we want to make with regarding abortion in America, the federal government, which exists, partially to protect the innocent, right? So if we have 1 million innocents that are slaughtered every year because of abortion, what should be our responsibility to protect those innocent children and to rescue those children?
It is a complicated issue. I know that your group has rescued over 7,000 babies, and you reach mothers online through search engine marketing. Thank you so much for joining us. Reverend Dean Nelson. Today is day 2 of a week devoted to the awareness of persecuted Christians. The Knights of Columbus and the U.S. bishops have joined together to support our brothers and sisters suffering around the world. EWTN will air a special mass tomorrow to honor victims of Christian genocide. The liturgy will be celebrated by the Chaldean Archbishop of Erbil, Iraq. Archbishop Warda will do this in Aramaic, the language of Christ. It will air at 6 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. And then EWTN News Nightly is also at a special time tomorrow at 5:30 Eastern. We are going to focus our entire program on Christian persecution. We will have an interview with Archbishop Warda. Up next, Prince Harry is off the market. The Catholic connection to the soon-to-be new royal. And preparing for Christmas, from the Vatican to the White House. Detroit Archbishop Alan Vigneron celebrates a massive Thanksgiving for the beatification of Father Solanus Casey. It took place yesterday at Detroit's cathedral. The priest, who worked in Detroit for years, was declared blessed a little over a week ago. Poland approves a law that will virtually eliminate shopping on Sundays by the year 2020. Unions proposed the bill because they want their workers to have more time with their families. Catholic Church leaders also favor it, but opponents said it could do away with thousands of jobs. England prepares for a royal wedding. This one involves an American. Prince Harry, fifth in line to the throne, will marry American actress Meghan Markle in the spring. Markle graduated from a Catholic high school in Los Angeles. Among the congratulations was a tweet from Cardinal Vincent Nichols in the UK, who says he's praying for the couple's happiness. With Advent just around the corner, the Vatican unveils a giant symbol of Christmas in St. Peter's Square, as it does every year. Our Vatican correspondent Juliette Lindley has more on this, ready, extremely big story from Rome.
6 o'clock in the morning, and it's already very busy at the Vatican. They're scrubbing up for the arrival of a big guest, a statuesque guest. Indeed, one so large it takes a crane to help it into St. Peter's Square, and a 90-foot truck. We're talking about this tree, which has traveled for 12 days to get here and take up its official position as the Vatican Christmas tree.
After traveling more than 1,000 miles across Europe, this magnificent red fir has reached final destination. It was donated by the Diocese of the town of Elk in northeastern Poland to coincide with the 35th anniversary of the Vatican Christmas tree tradition, started by none other than Polish-born Saint Pope John Paul II.
Every year a different country or region is chosen to donate the tree. Monika Rubka represents the Polish company in charge of delivering this special oversized cargo to Pope Francis. Emotions are running high.
It's really huge thing. I think not only for me, but for all Polish people. It's really getting warm inside your heart to think that a Polish tree from Polish Mazur, the beautiful region, is gonna be here for all Christmas.
The Polish ambassador to the Holy See, Janusz Kotański, is equally as thrilled and tells us it's not the first papal Christmas tree to hail from his country.
It's only the second Christmas tree from Poland, even when the St. John Paul II was Pope. It was only in 1997, as far as I remember, then there was a Christmas tree from Poland. Now is the second time under the Pope Franciscus, and we are really very happy.
Very much the center of attention today. When it's inaugurated just before the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, the tree will stand alongside a nativity scene from less far afield. It was donated by an ancient abbey just a few hours away in southern Italy. In Rome, Juliette Lindley for EWTN News Nightly.
For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, to all of you around the world, thank you for watching. I'm Lauren Ashburn. We leave you tonight with more Christmas, unveiling of the decorations at the White House. Ballet dancers greeted First Lady Melania Trump today as she entered the vestibule near the north entrance. She introduced this year's White House holiday theme, time-honored traditions. Christmas trees line both sides of the cross hall that leads into the East Room, where a tall nativity scene climbs the back wall. Angels are suspended above Mary and Joseph, and the baby Jesus is lying in the manger. Visitors can stroll through the green, blue, and red rooms, each decorated with their own Christmas colors. We're posting more pictures online for you to enjoy. Make sure you go to EWTN News Nightly's Facebook page. Good night, and God bless.